Hi, New Life Church. Welcome to our TRAC Devo for this week as we have finished up the book of Exodus and headed on into Proverbs. Well, as I always say, this past week there were so many passages, so many verses that I could have picked from to share with you today. But there's just one thought that I kind of centered on that I want to share. And what's so fascinating, I was telling my daughter the other day, no matter how many times you read God's word, there's always something new that you can learn. There's always something new that God reveals to us in his word. And this past week for me, it was no exception because it was a simple little phrase that was repeated several times that God used to impact my life. And it's actually from the last chapter in the book of Exodus. So let's go to Exodus chapter 40. And here we read in verse 16. Moses proceeded to do everything just as the Lord had commanded him. I go down to verse 19. Just as the Lord commanded him. Then I go to verse 21. Just as the Lord commanded him. Then I go to verse 23. Just as the Lord commanded him. Then I head on over to verse 27. Guess what it says? Just as the Lord commanded him. Down to verse 29. Just as the Lord commanded him. Over to verse 32 once again, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. And I think why this stuck out to me, it just reminded me of how important obedience is. You see, God had given them in the previous chapters that we read, God had laid out for them exactly how he wanted everything created, he wanted everything put together, colors, sizes, shapes. The people were asked to do exactly what God had called them to do. And it was amazing because in one of the chapters you read where they brought so many things, so much supplies that Moses actually had to say, hey guys, don't bring anything more. Because they had listened to what God had called them and they were started bringing what God had required of them. Now we read in the chapters preceding chapter 40 is that they were asked to put it together in a very specific way. Again, sizes, colors, shapes. And now we're reading where God told Moses, this is how I want it all laid out. And Moses did exactly what God commanded him to do. So the word that stuck out to me this past week was the word obedience. Now, all of us are called to obey God, and we know that. But so many times we want to add our 2 cents. We want to add our opinions. We want to add our rights. We want to add our thoughts, instead of just simply obeying what God's called us to do. Moses didn't add anything to it. Moses didn't say, but God, I think it would be better if we laid it out this way, or if we did it a different way. Maybe it would be cheaper if I found some other kind of materials. Moses didn't do that. Moses did exactly what God called him to do. No question. And again, that's what stuck out to me is obedience. Obedience to what God's called me to do. Obedience to how God's called me to do it. Sometimes we want to take shortcuts. Sometimes we want to find it the easy way or the simple way or the way that doesn't cost me anything. There's that verse in the Bible that obedience is better than sacrifice. And, you know, we want to figure out how to obey on our own terms. God, I'll obey you, but I want to do it my own way. And so the challenge for us is to simply obey what God's commanded us and to do what he's asked of us to do, just like Moses did. Moses did exactly what God commanded him to do. So New Life Church, the word for the week then is obedience. Obedience to God's word, obedience to what God's calling you to do, obedience to how he's calling you to do it, obedience to God. New Life Church, know that we love you, we care about you, and we are always here for you. Have a wonderful week.